Let me be direct with you from the outset. What we are witnessing is not a localized diplomatic spat. It is not the standard posturing of mid-level bureaucrats in Washington or Brussels. What we are witnessing is the systematic dismantling of the post-World War II security architecture in the Asia-Pacific, specifically orchestrated to provoke a confrontation that the West is fundamentally unprepared to manage. I am looking at a series of intelligence summaries and classified maritime transit reports that have been circulating among senior defense analysts in East Asia for the past 72 hours, and I need you to look at these implications with me because what they show is not a defensive posture. It is not a routine freedom of navigation exercise. It is not a bluster-filled press release from the Pentagon. What these documents show is the calculated crossing of Beijing's deepest non-negotiable red line regarding nuclear-capable strategic assets in their immediate maritime periphery. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why this escalation is not a mistake, why the silence from the mainstream media is a deliberate obfuscation, and why this shift in posture directly correlates to the energy security of every single person listening to this right now. This is a critical briefing. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is based on data that is being actively ignored by the primary Western news networks, yet is driving internal decision-making in Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran at this very moment. Let's start with the fundamental geography and history here, because if you don't understand the physical constraints of the South China Sea and the Strait of Taiwan, you cannot understand why the current Western policy is essentially a geopolitical death trap. We are talking about a region that is not just a trade route, it is the jugular vein of the global manufacturing economy. The average water depth in key transit corridors is approximately 30 to 50 meters, a shallow water environment that is notoriously difficult for traditional deepwater naval assets to dominate. To put that in perspective, American Ohio-class submarines, the backbone of their nuclear-powered deterrent, are over 170 meters long. They are designed for the deep, silent expanse of the Pacific, not the claustrophobic, sensor-dense littoral waters now being saturated by regional defensive networks. This means that every time a Western carrier group enters these waters, they are not projecting power, they are essentially painting a massive target on their own hulls. According to reports from the International Institute for Strategic Studies and corroborated by regional military attachés in Singapore, Beijing has recently integrated a new layer of AI-driven acoustic sensors along the seabed. This is not speculation. A high-ranking officer in the People's Liberation Army Navy recently noted that their ability to track non-local submersible signatures has increased by over 400% in the last quarter alone. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now, let's talk about what they have actually built. Announcement number 1, the saturation of the undersea domain. And this one matters more than anything else happening in this theater right now because it renders traditional Western naval dominance obsolete in a localized conflict. We are seeing the rapid deployment of unmanned autonomous underwater vehicles, UUVs, that are specifically designed for anti-access/area denial A2/AD operations. These are not toys. They are sophisticated long-endurance platforms capable of loitering on the seabed for weeks, waiting for a specific acoustic signature to trigger a strike. The technical specifications here are alarming: low-frequency, high-output sonar coupled with automated target recognition software. The implication is simple: the Western ability to maintain a secret naval presence in these waters has effectively evaporated overnight. According to recent reporting by Defense Security Asia, and confirmed by multiple regional intelligence centers, Beijing has now deployed over 50 of these specialized systems in key choke points. This is a quantitative shift. Previously, you had to worry about a few conventional submarines. Now you have to worry about a seafloor that has been turned into a smart minefield. That number 50 matters. It means they can achieve near-total sea denial without firing a single shot, simply by threatening the insurance viability of any vessel attempting to traverse the zone. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, the escalation of the nuclear narrative. This is the part the Pentagon has attempted to downplay, but the internal documents tell a much more severe story. When we talk about crossing red lines, we are no longer just talking about trade tariffs or diplomatic expulsions. We are talking about the overt placement of dual-capable missile systems within striking range of high-value regional assets. This is not a minor issue. It is a fundamental shift in the strategic calculus of the Asia-Pacific. And when you understand the connection between these new maritime sensors and the land-based mobile launch platforms, it becomes a critical issue that threatens the very stability of the global order. Stay with me because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the implication of an accidental, miscalculated conflict becomes impossible to ignore. Announcement number 3, and this is the one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly: the abandonment of back-channel communications. Historically, there was always a hotline, a mechanism to ensure that tactical maneuvers didn't escalate into strategic war. My sources indicate that these channels have been effectively silenced. The reason for this, and the reason for the aggressive posture we see today, is the same reason for the ongoing situation in the Middle East, a fundamental breakdown in trust. When the West pushed for the recent security pacts, they essentially told Beijing that the Pacific was no longer a sphere of influence, but a theater of containment. Beijing, as anyone with a basic understanding of their history would expect, is responding with total force. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let me be direct about what is happening behind the headlines, because there are two stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering the one that supports the existing power structure. Washington responded to the latest maritime developments by conducting a freedom of navigation operation, essentially sailing a destroyer through contested waters and claiming it was a victory for international law. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States conducts a military operation, and its strongest regional allies, nations that rely on the U.S. for protection, begin to whisper about diplomatic neutrality because they fear the economic consequences of a conflict with Beijing, that is not ambiguity. That is not diplomatic nuance. That is a verdict. It is a verdict on the declining utility of the Western security guarantee in the 21st century. If you own a business that relies on the global supply chain, or if you are simply worried about the price of electronics or consumer goods, what is happening in the South China Sea is not a distant foreign policy story. It is a direct threat to your household budget. When those insurance premiums spike because the waters are contested, you pay for it at the register. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Look at the Peloponnesian War. Athens and Sparta went to war over the hegemony of the Greek world. They exhausted their resources, they destroyed their economies, and while they were busy bleeding each other white, a third party, the Macedonian Empire, rose from the periphery to dominate them both. The parallel here is exact. The West is currently the overextended power, Beijing is the rising power, and the historical record shows that when these two meet, the result is almost always a catastrophic exhaustion that clears the stage for a new, unexpected leader. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths because there is no honest middle ground left. Path 1, the optimistic scenario. A sudden back-channel breakthrough leads to a managed, albeit uneasy, cooling of tensions. This would require an immediate cessation of provocative military drills and a return to the pre-2024 security status quo. Likelihood very low. Path 2, the realistic scenario, a slow-motion, decades-long great power competition that permanently splits the global economy into 2 distinct technological and trade blocks. This is the path we are currently on. It will be characterized by persistent friction, localized skirmishes, and a steady decline in standard of living for the middle class. Path 3, the catastrophic scenario, an unintended kinetic collision in the South China Sea leads to a rapid escalation. A single miscalculation, a failed communication, and the entire Pacific theater ignites. The consequences would be a total, immediate freeze of global maritime trade. I think we are closer to Path 3 than the headlines suggest. The momentum of these deployments is currently outpacing the diplomatic capacity to contain them. But there is a caveat. If Beijing decides that the economic cost of conflict outweighs the strategic benefit of total dominance, they may hold back, but only to wait for the next Western electoral cycle. Here are the questions I want you to take away. Why are we being told this is routine when military analysts know it is an unprecedented escalation? What happens to the global economy when the most important maritime corridor on Earth is treated like a combat zone? And finally, who exactly benefits from a world that is permanently divided into 2 warring economic blocs? Tell me in the comments what you think the administration does next. Tell me if you think we have already passed the point of no return. We will keep tracking every single development in these theaters, from the acoustic sensors on the seabed to the diplomatic cables in Beijing. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand the reality behind the carefully curated narratives you see on the news. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next urgent briefing, and we will see you in the next analysis.